On today's throwback, we are having a look at the Neca Friday the 13th 25th anniversary box set featuring Pamela Voorhees as well as the Sackhead Jason. Now, unfortunately, my box has seen better days. I assure you everything is in there. This was unfortunately, the only way that you could get Pamela Voorhees. Jason Voorhees, as with the bag on his head, was available released later in the Cult Classics. I believe it was a Cult Classics Hall of Fame Jason. But this was the only way that you could get the diorama of Pamela Voorhees' head as well as Pamela Voorhees. On the packaging, you can see that there is Jason down below there, the iconic disfigurement of the decapitated head of Pamela Voorhees. On the side, I have to actually have my camera a little further back because it is a large box. On the side you can see Pamela Voorhees, and on the back you can see the two characters, the diorama. The read-up says, to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Friday the 13th comes the deluxe box set featuring the action figure debuts of Pamela Voorhees and Sackhead, quotations, Sackhead Jason. This set combines the key elements from the original Friday the 13th story arc, including Jason's loving mother ready to avenge her son's death with a knife, axe, bow, and arrow. Jason nearby to worship and avenge his mother with pickaxe, pitchfork, machete, and spear. In the center of all of it is the shrine, Jason constructed in memorial to his decapitated mother. Both figures have bases that can be joined together or attached to the shrine to form one massive scene of Voorhees' slaughter. Again, this all comes to us from the good folks at NECA. What I am going to do is take a bit of a break. I'm going to open this actually back up, and when we come back in this throwback, we are going to have a better look at not only Pamela Voorhees, but also Sackhead Jason. Definitely more on the way. Stay tuned. Now, there's a lot to cover in this throwback, so we're going to do these in parts. I guess for starters, what we'll look at is the accessories that come with the two figures. For starters, you get yourself a very long spear, incredibly long spear with very small point on the end there. No, it is surprisingly sharp. Not super sharp, but it definitely has a point to it. Get the point? A long spear, though, you probably won't have either of the figures displayed with it, but a nice accessory. You get yourself a bow. There is actually a cord on the bow. Unfortunately, though, the plastic used for the bow is extremely fragile. If you have this figure loose, this may not have survived your years of collecting. Speaking of not surviving the years of collecting, while Spot said he had everything in this set, I think I'm missing the arrow. Somehow in my packing and storing this set away, my arrow has gone missing. Who's really going to worry about an arrow, but my arrow is gone. Lone tier. You also get yourself a pickaxe, which if you were making yourself a custom Harry Warden, you would have an ideal pickaxe to give him. Some detail going on there. Some of the brown, some of the silver there. On a side note, I don't know why, I wish NECA would just release a Harry Warden figure. I would be all over that. All over it. Anyways, you get yourself an axe. Paint's, for the most part, pretty good on all of the accessories. You got the brown going on there, a lighter brown, a little darker brown up at the top of the blade there, by the blade. Some nice detail on the actual axe head. Again, it's not sharp, but it's not super smooth either. You get, of course, a trusty machete. Not really sure if it's got blood on it. It's got speckles of something on it. Your discretion as to what that might be. It could be blood. There's the handle right there. Likely you could give Jason that if you so wish, or you can give him the pickaxe. It's really up to you. You could also give him the axe. And I guess that really, in a nutshell, is the accessories. Now, obviously, there's one other accessory, but we'll get into that in a second. Let's first have a look at Pamela Voorhees. This is, again, the only way you can get Pamela Voorhees. Do we get a nice Pamela Voorhees out of this set? It is questionable. I don't know if she is... She's got the likeness in some regards. She does have the likeness of, was it Betsy Palmer? But I would say where the figure suffers is the paint. On camera, it doesn't look too bad. In person, it's awfully pasty looking. She's got a lot of dark red in the figure, where I don't think it really suits this figure very much at all. Crazy look on her face? You would be absolutely correct. I would agree. She does have one crazy look on her face. But the coloring on the hair, I think, is slightly off. You can even see that she's got an undershirt going on there, underneath the iconic Mrs. Voorhees sweater. You always have to wonder stories behind the scenes of movies. Why they decided, okay, well, we're going to give Mrs. Voorhees the blue sweater. Maybe it was just a last-minute decision. Somebody in craft market, or somebody maybe who was just working there said, well, Betsy's a little cold. What can we give her? Well, I don't know. I got a sweater. My sister's sweater. I don't know. We'll throw it on her. You know, you got to wonder if it was a last-minute decision. You can see that she's also got a knife. Now, her hand is not covered in glue. I've still got the elastic on her. The elastic has yellowed a bit from how old this figure is. I've yet to remove the knife, and likely I might just keep the knife on her. Or I could just give her the machete. You could go either or. You can see where they have perfected hands over the course of NECA's manufacturing. Some of the earlier hands are questionable. She's got a bad case of arthritis. And actually, looking at the hand initially, I thought she had 6 fingers. It's just the way it's sculpted. It looks like there's a lot more fingers than what there is. And I guess aside from that, she's also got her little small loafers right there. And her black slacks. In the way of Mrs. Voorhees' articulation, her head is on a ball joint. Now, it's actually on a ball joint at her neck, but you can get lots of movement there. Her shoulders, her arms only rotate. Her hand rotates. This arm does swivel at the elbow. This one also swivels at the elbow. I'd say there's rotation in the waist, but it's stiff. Now, that's not to say there isn't any. You can see it looks like there's a point where you could swivel it. I just can't seem to get it to move right now. And she does also have a swivel pivot in the foot. There you have, though, Mrs. Voorhees. Not the best Mrs. Voorhees, but if that's the best we're going to get, I would say she is definitely a must-have in your collection. Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Mrs. Voorhees, on its own, I'm going to give her... I think I'm only going to give her a 5.5. She's not spectacular, but again, if that's the best we're going to get, well, that's the best we're going to get. Moving along in this set of bountiful accessories and whatnot, let's actually have a look at Sackhead Jason. I always loved the design of this Jason. That hillbilly overall wearing, I should be on Hee Haw. Remember Hee Haw? He's got himself his sack face, which was, I think, very cool that they incorporated that in the remake. Even if you didn't like the remake, I like the fact that they at least gave him the sack mask. You can see in certain lighting, yes, he does have an eye, a lone eye. It's recessed, which I like, because on some light you can't actually see the eye. It looks like there's nothing in there. And that is a nice touch. You can see he's also got he's got a thread or rope tying that shut. He's got himself a plaid shirt, which I think looks really nice on him, and the jeans I think are done well. Unfortunately, I think being that this is an older figure, it does suffer from the sense that the paint on not only Jason but also Mrs. Voorhees is a little glossy. Could really have afforded to use a matte paint on it, but the details are all there, and I think the plaid shirt worked well on Jason. Now he does have an alternate head, which, if you have not seen the end of Friday the 13th Part 2, this would be some surprise to you, but you see Jason there. He is ugly. He is fugly. He's got himself some hair. Longer hair than featured really in the rest of the sequels. The disfigured lower eye, as you can also see. To this day, still freaks me out. The end of... Actually, I should say the end of Friday the 13th 1 and 2. Jason leaping out, whether it be leaping out of the water as a child and grabbing the girl, or smashing through the window in Part 2. It is entirely up to you, as a collector, how you would have them on display. Or if you were lucky enough, maybe you picked up this set and you also picked up the standalone Cult Classics version of this figure, because then you can have Jason depicted with both heads. I kind of like the Sackhead, as he wore it for most of the movie, but the option is yours. He does have a ball joint that would connect if you were to take this head off. I'm going to likely just leave it on, because I don't want to worry about pegs always breaking and stuff on these figures, but the option is there if you want to have either or. Now Jason's articulation, he has that ball jointed head, the same as Mrs. Voorhees. You can kind of have him leaning his head to the side. The girl's wearing the sweater. His arms peg out, but because it's an earlier figure, I would say a little bit of caution, as always. Some would say, well, Spot, you always seem worried about pegs. Well, you know what? It's better to be worried than to have a broken figure. The arms do go out, and they do rotate. He does have a swivel in the elbow, rotation in the hand. Nothing in the waist, but he does also have a pivot in the foot. Jason, I think, still holds up well. Mrs. Voorhees could easily use an update. Because we have gotten Friday the 13th figures really respectively from 3 onward, I don't know if NECA's plans are ever to go back and revisit these two characters. Jason, I think, still holds up relatively well. I really wish Pamela could have been re-released and redone. Jason, on the other hand, I'm going to give him a 7. I've still always been a big fan of this figure. I think detail there is done well, and I think I still think it holds up well with the newer released Jason figures. So there you have Jason. I'm just going to kind of put him to the side. I'm going to put Mrs. Voorhees to the side if she will stand. She might not stand. I'll just lay her down. And let's actually have a look at the display base. Now, they do each come with their own display bases. There's a peg there for the character to stand on. There's one, and there's the other one there. It's entirely up to you which one you want to have with each character. I mean, the option is there. According to the instructions, these are supposed to connect to one another. Now, they don't really connect to the display base, to the main base. You kind of just have to line them up until they fit. Like so, or like so. Again, they don't necessarily connect to one another. They just kind of sandwich themselves against little grooves that would accommodate them. But I mean, moving those display bases aside, obviously the third accessory or the third character in this set is a very large display base of Mrs. Voorhees' severed head. It is substantial. I mean, it's hollow on the bottom. But still, having said that, it's still a really neat display base. You can see that there's a skeleton going on there. Quite decapitated, or not decapitated, quite dead. Quite dead. That same sweater we had discussed before is now there, draped over the side along with the pants. Nice stonework and everything else on here. Paint, I think, is good. No problems with the paint. And then, of course, on the top of the display base, yes, we do have the severed head of Mrs. Voorhees. Doesn't quite look like Mrs. Voorhees, but then again, didn't really look like Mrs. Voorhees in the movie either. It's weak. I don't think the sculpt is fantastic, but as I said with Pamela Voorhees, if this is the best you're going to get for a severed head of Mrs. Voorhees, that's the best you're going to get. You can see that she's got some candles going on there. A little bit of hair. She's got some candles going on there. A really neat display base. It could have been better, but the fact that they included it is a nice touch. Is a really nice touch. I don't think while the sculpt is there perfectly, I think the paint definitely makes this display base excel. You know, I suppose I could probably even give the display base a rating. Why not? It is in itself almost its own character in this box set. The display base sculpt doesn't quite look like her as it did in the movie, even though the stump in the movie didn't really look like her either. The display base is large, it's beefy, it's detailed, and I'm going to give it on its own an 8. An 8 for a stump. How about that? There you go, my friends, viewers alike. Today's throwback, we were having a look at the 25th anniversary, Friday the 13th. Not technically part 2, Friday the 13th part 1, part 2 respectively. We're having a look at the Voorhees family. As a side note, I'm really hoping NECA decides to revisit these two figures and give us updates of these figures. I totally think they're deserving of it. The fact that we are getting part 3 onward, it's likely not going to happen. And if that's the case, this set obviously is a must-have. If you are a Friday the 13th fan, definitely pick this up. Though unfortunately, it's going to be a little mucho dinero. Thanks for watching, guys. Certainly stick around as well. Spot's got more throwbacks lined up for you. And as always, as always, I'll see you guys next time.